Okay.
Good to go?
Yeah.
Okay. Welcome to the inaugural meeting of the Moab City Audit Committee. This is a brand new city designated committee that is charged with reviewing the annual audit. And we are today going to do a couple of things per the agenda. I'll introduce myself. I'm David Everett. I am the COO / soon to be interim city manager and am the designee of the, let's see, where does it say that? I am the designee of the mayor. I'm sorry, the city manager's designee to chair this meeting. I'm not a voting member. We do have 3 voting members. We have Michael Black here, who's a city employee as the community development director. We have council member Tani Knudsen Boyd, who is a council member. And we have Jennifer Williams, who is our non-city employee / not council member of this board, who has relatively speaking expertise in financial matters and is currently the EMS is, could you tell me what you do exactly?
My title is administrative coordinator, but I do most of all the bookkeeping side of things, all the payroll, all the finance stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you for being willing to join us in this on this august board or committee here. So without further ado, Summer, is there anything else I need to do from your perspective? Okay, calling this meeting to order. First item on the agenda, other than calling the meeting to order, is the consideration of adoption of the bylaws. Those are in the packet. These are modeled off of bylaws we've used for other committees and boards in the city. Do I have a motion?
Well, if we're just going off of what we've used previously, I'll just make a motion that we approve bylaws as they're presented.
Discussion?
Second.
All right, seconds help. Sorry. You can tell I've done this a lot. Right, thank you. Do I have a second?
I need help too. I'll second.
Thank you. Second from Tani.
Now.
Yes. No discussion.
So are these based off the city council's bylaws then? Or?
Not the city council, but I believe for the recreation, the RAP. Yeah. So per the city recorder's comment, these are based off of the bylaws from the RAP committee, which reviews applications for spending the RAP tax funds, but modified accordingly.
And then we approve these and the city council also approves them, or do they accept them? They're just approved here and that's it. Okay.
Yeah, just approved by this committee for internal management.
Well, I didn't say anything about extra salary.
No. Hey, anything else? All right, call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion passes. Or any nays?
No.
No nays. Motion passes 3-0. All right, moving right along. Item number 3, review and recommendation of the city council of the draft annual audit and accompanying draft management letter. We have on the Zoom call Ron Stewart with Gilbert and Stewart, who is the city's contracted auditor for the purposes of the annual financial audit. Ron, would you mind just giving us a quick briefing on where things are with the annual audit?
Yes, thank you for letting me be here today, and thanks for letting me be here electronically. I really appreciate that. So what I'll do is just take a couple minutes and talk about, first of all, can everybody hear me okay?
Very
okay.
Well.
All right, good. So I'll go through and just kind of talk about what we do as auditors, the opinions that we come to, and how we come to those opinions. So really, with an audit of the city, there's 3 main areas that we're looking at. We want to make sure that the financial statements are materially correct and that they meet accounting standards. We want to make sure that internal controls are designed, implemented, and working. And we want to make sure that we're in compliance with state law. with the areas that we were asked to look at during that fiscal year. So I'll just go through each one of those and kind of talk about what we do. So the first one is the financial statements. Are they materially correct, and are they meeting accounting standards? So we look at the trial balance of the city, and then we perform a number of tests on those balances to make sure they're materially correct and they meet those standards. We'll look at cash. We send out confirmations to third party, to the banks, to make sure that the balances that they're showing match ours. We'll send out confirmations for debt. We'll send out confirmations for the property taxes, sales tax in your situation, taxes that come from other governments, to make sure that what we're showing on the financial statements match what they are showing on their books. We also pull a significant number of invoices. So we'll look at invoices for accounts payable. So we'll pull a number of invoices after the end of the year and make sure that the expense happened in the proper period. We'll pull invoices for capital assets. And then we also pull just a random number of assets or invoices and look at those to make sure that the check matches the invoice, that it's posted to the proper GL accounts, that it makes sense and is reasonable, and that it's in the proper period. We also do a number of calculations. So on a financial statement, there's estimates and there's calculations that are built into that statement. And so we'll go through and recalculate those balances. For instance, compensated absences have allocations between funds. You have retirement that has allocations. You have depreciation that has depreciable lives. Some of those things we'll go through and we'll recalculate those balances to make sure that they're meeting accounting standards and they're appropriate. We also do a lot of analytical reviews. So we'll look at this. We'll pull at the beginning of the audit. We look at the trial balance. We pull a sample of this year versus the last year, the year before. And we look at differences. We try and figure out, why did things change? Why did they go up? Why did they go down? And if we can find the answers to those. We do that initially as we're actually testing balances. We'll do that a second time, maybe a little bit more in depth, to see why did cash change. And then when we're writing, or when the financial statements are written, we'll look at that the third time and say, okay, based on these categories, can we see that we've addressed those issues and we can understand those changes. So that's really quick what we do as auditors. There's a whole lot of other steps and procedures and tests that we go through, but those are the main ones that we look at to make sure that the financial statements are materially correct and meet those accounting standards. So that's what we did. The opinion that we came to is, if you look at the audit report, the very first couple of paragraphs, it says, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly, in all material respects, the respective financial position of the business type activities of Moab City as of June 30th, 2023, and the respective changes in financial position where applicable, and cash flows thereof for the year then ended in accordance, with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. So that is a unmodified opinion. A clean opinion, or the best opinion that you can receive. So what that means is that the financial statements, we feel like, meet those accounting standards and are materially correct. The second thing that we do is we look at internal controls of the city. Now we want to make sure that those controls are implemented, that they're designed, implemented, and effectively working. So we do that through interviews, walkthroughs, questionnaires. We send out questionnaires at the beginning of the audit. We do a lot of testing. As we're doing testing of other balances, we'll pull invoices. As we look at those invoices, we want to make sure that the controls that are behind those are actually working. So, and then we'll do walkthroughs where we walk through the financial, or the invoice all the way to the financial statements. We want to make sure that those are working. If there's issues where the controls are just not working, then this is where we come and explain those to you and let you know. So if you look at the back of the audit report, there is a schedule of, on page 47, a schedule of significant deficiencies. We noted that during the audit, through our testing of controls and things, that there were some controls that weren't working effectively as far as the year-end accruals. We need to make sure that some of these things, including accounts payable, interest payable, compensated absences, retirement, depreciation, some of those year-end entries are being made and properly reflected on the financial statements. We understand that there was a great turnover in personnel and an accounting system during the year, and that makes things so much more difficult. So we understand that made that even more difficult. But I do think the city's got a plan, and we'll continue to monitor that to make sure that those controls are implemented and that we're make sure those year-end accruals are working. So we don't give an opinion on internal controls, but we evaluate those and we make sure that they're working and they're effective. And so that's our observation of the controls. The third thing that we do is we look at state compliance. So the state auditor gives us certain things that we need to look at, and every year there is things that we look at every single year on a 3-year basis, or kind of a rotating situation. So this year, we looked at budgetary compliance, fund balance, restricted taxes, government fees, fraud risk assessment, and Open and Public Meetings Act. So the state auditor gives us certain procedures to perform. They're pretty specific. You look at these things and test these things. So we went through and we tested those. And we noted that there was one finding with your fund balance. So the fund balance is required to have, you can't have more than a certain amount of money sitting in your general fund. And we exceeded that within the city. So a good resolution of that is to know that there's projects out there that we're going to be spending that money on and transferring that money to the capital projects fund with that intent that it's going to be spent on those projects. And then to continue to monitor that, at the year end to make sure that we're in compliance with that fund balance requirement. If you look at the long list of findings that the city, a city could have, having too much money in the capital or in the general fund is probably the top of the list of better than bad findings, right? So easy resolution to move those over with a purpose to spend those on a particular project can get us down underneath that limit. So that was a real quick review of what we do as auditors and the conclusions that we came to. And I'd be happy to answer any questions or talk more about anything if anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Ron. Questions from the committee?
I've got a couple.
Michael, yeah, go ahead.
So all the things you looked at that you talked about, I didn't hear you mention looking at bid processes or contract awards. Is that something you look at?
In general, we'll look at controls, but no, not specifically in those. We look maybe a little bit more high level. Now, if it's inside the scope of an audit, and you guys as an audit committee definitely have discretion to say, hey, auditors, we'd love you to take a look at something in that realm of an internal control, and we could definitely do that. But we didn't specifically look at that this year.
And then I had two other questions. Go ahead. Okay. So when you said you met with people and talking about internal controls, you did interviews and things like that. Does that include people who are handling cash, or were you meeting with department heads, or I guess who'd you meet with at the city and do interviews with?
We sent out questionnaires, a questionnaire to the general, but we mostly met with the accounting staff to talk about just the generality of those controls. We did get a copy of the policy and procedures manual and looked through that and reviewed those, and then kind of designed our tests as we were looking at other parts of the city to see against those controls. And we'll do that differently. We kind of randomly pick different people to send those questionnaires to every year so that we get a different sample.
Okay. And then if you have questions on that questionnaire, who do you follow up with? The person who filled it out or the accounting
Them
staff?
first. Yeah. We'll look at the person that filled out the questionnaire to make sure we understand what their responses were. And then we'll talk to those that are above them too. If we find that that's an issue that's not following the policy, or the policy is not being followed, we'll follow up.
Okay. That was it. I thought I had two. That was just one.
Other questions?
I'm just wondering if there is anything that the city council should be doing throughout the year to address anything that could come up with, instead of waiting till the end of the year.
I think, this work, the accounting systems, cities, the environment is changing constantly. So constantly having an evaluation of controls and looking at those controls and making sure that the controls that we have in place meet what we're actually dealing with in the society is always a good thing. And that can be done, throughout the year. The other thing is obviously continue to review budgets, making sure that we're not overspending in certain areas. That can obviously solve a lot of problems at year end as well, as we're monitoring those throughout the year. I think the accruals and the year end things is more of just some policies and procedures to put in place, and some checklists to make sure that we're capturing all those things. And some of those it's a little difficult to do throughout the year. It's easier, not easier. It's some of those accruals happen at year end, right? Making sure that accounts payable is being picked up all year round is meeting accounting standards for sure. But making sure that those, that they're in the proper period happens at year end, but it also could happen throughout the rest of the year. So I guess the answer is yes. There is some things I think the council could do, just as a continual evaluation of controls, I'd say would be the top of the list.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. With that, I'd entertain a motion to recommend the draft annual audit and the draft management letter be forwarded to the city council.
Okay, when are you guys have to do it?
Anybody?
I'm not good at this process. I
Just
need
say,
some
you
help,
can just
so
even say
I
so
do-
moved.
Yes, so moved.
Have a second.
Sorry.
No, you're good. Also, thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That's 3 ayes, no nays, motion passes. And with that, I believe there's no further business. Motion, I'm just gonna unilaterally adjourn. There we go. All right, thank you all for participating. Thanks, Ron. We'll see you next week.
Okay. Hey, thanks. Just a shout out, an audit's pretty in depth. A lot of information gets, asked. And so we just really appreciate the staff for being able to provide the information and give us the information we need to